What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and let me know if you guys are still rocking with that intro. I feel like, I don't know, I got a lot of positive comments about it, but I did just get a comment. It wasn't so much negative. It was just like, hey, man, like, the intro is not bad, but I'm not excited to be in your basement, in your mom's basement, whoever's basement. So I do kind of understand that, and we could shift it, to studio, something else, but I kind of like it. It's like lighthearted and kind of funny in a way. No one actually wants to be in my basement, obviously, but I'm out here grinding in my basement trying to make YouTube videos for your guys, and that's just the atmosphere we're in. I can say like man cave or studio or something like that. So let me know what you guys think. I've gotten a lot of positive reviews about the intro, but I just wanted to run that back real quick. At 3,000 subscribers, we could do some rebranding if we need to. I still think it's all right, but let me know down below in the comments what you guys are thinking. Now let's actually get into what we're going to cover in this video, not my dumb intro. And we're going to talk about 5 wide receivers I'm not drafting in fantasy football. And I cannot explain how tough this was to actually come up with a list of 5 wide receivers because I'm such a fiend for wide receivers. I truly do think from rounds like 2 through 8, the best pick that you could possibly make is drafting a wide receiver. You guys know I love wide receivers, 0 RB, all of that. But I narrowed it down to 5. We got 5 that we're going to go over today. Before we get into that, make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
Thirsty, thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm critical. My nitty bag.
First up, we have Adam Thielen, who's going off the board as the 412, as the wide receiver 24 on Underdog. And I'm telling you guys, this is the sharpest ADP to use because everybody in these draft rooms has money on the line, whether that's like $125 in the big dog or $5 in the puppy. Underdog Fantasy is a best ball platform where everyone has money on the line when they're drafting. And the best part is that you don't have to manage that team in season. So if you want to go get some practice in for your home league drafts, I get a ton of comments that are like, hey, Ron, I watched your 0 RB video. I loved it. I want to try it in my home league draft. I'm begging you guys, if you have never done 0 RB before and you've never hopped into a draft room and used 0 RB before, make sure you go try it out on Underdog Fantasy. Use my promo code RON when you deposit $10 for a $25 bonus. You can then get $35. You can run up like 7 $5 mock drafts and get experimental and actually try out these strategies without having to waste your home league on doing something stupid. So again, use my promo code RON when you deposit $10 or more for a $25 bonus. Now, getting back to Adam Thielen, I'm very hesitant to use a top 5 round draft pick on aging players that are on a downward trajectory. One of these years we're going to look up and Adam Thielen is going to be dust. And I'm of the mindset when it comes to this, I would rather be early rather than late across the board, especially at wide receiver. I'd rather be early on the breakouts. I'd rather be early on the guys that are young and ascending, and I'd rather be early on the guys that are on the decline. Like I said, Thielen's going at the back end of the 4th round. I personally can't get there because Thielen has 2 big red flags for me. One of them is touchdown regression, and the other is lack of volume. Now, everyone kind of throws around touchdown regression. They don't really know what it means, but last year, Thielen truly got insanely lucky. He had 14 touchdowns, and I get that Irv Smith is hurt now, so he does kind of get some of that red zone usage back. But we're talking about a guy who had a 12.96% touchdown rate last year and scored 14 touchdowns. To put in perspective, his last pretty good year, in 2018, he was really good. He had 9 touchdowns on a 5.88% touchdown rate. So the difference between 13% and 6% if we're rounding. He doubled what he put up in his prime. We can't expect that 2 years in a row. And on top of that, we had Justin Jefferson last year emerge, and he only scored 7 touchdowns. That number will go up 100%. And Jefferson not only eats into the touchdowns, he eats into Thielen's volume. Thielen commanded a 25% target share last year, which is solid, but this is a team that wants to run the ball. They were the 6th lowest team in neutral game pass rate, which is just situations where you're either not in garbage time or it's 1st and 2nd down. So just what your team plans to do, and the Vikings want to run that LeVar ball control type offense. And because of that, Thielen only had 108 targets last year, which was 27th in the league despite having a top 15 target share. And the fact that he finished as a wide receiver 11 on the 27th most targets just speak to how what he did was unsustainable. Now, obviously, we're not drafting him as a top 12 wide receiver, so the regression is already baked in to a certain extent, but I don't think that we're baking in Justin Jefferson. A lot of people want to take rookie wide receivers and just copy and paste what they did after year 1 to year 2. Justin Jefferson last year had a 25% target share. That's going to improve in year 2. We saw a guy like Metcalf last year. He had a 20% target share as a rookie. He then came out last year and had a 24% target share as a sophomore. We're going to see Justin Jefferson go from 25% target share. It's really not wild for me to say that he could have a 28% target share, a 29% target share. I even think if Jefferson is as good as he could be, a guy who just broke the record in the rookie receiving, he could have a 30% target share up there with guys like DeAndre Hopkins and Devontae Adams. He's on that kind of trajectory, so I think that he's going to squeeze out Thielen. And while Thielen's getting drafted as a wide receiver 2, I'm more comfortable with him as a like high-end wide receiver 3 a round and a half later. So I'm fading Adam Thielen personally. I'll take the young guys in that range. I'll take Claypool, Jamar Chase, Ayuk, all of those guys over Thielen. Then we have Michael Thomas, and I couldn't be less interested in drafting Michael Thomas. He's going in the 8th round at the 807 as the wide receiver 45. I'm not a guy who wants to draft injured players in fantasy football. I don't want those roster cloggers. You know, Michael Thomas got ankle surgery in June. So pretty recently, like 2 months ago, on an injury that he had last year that he delayed surgery on. So he's already kind of in a murky situation with the team. Why did you not get that fixed sooner? Like, I don't know what we're doing waiting till June to get surgery when he was out almost all season. And then he gets placed on IR. So that means he's ineligible to return until week 8. That's a minimum 7 games missed. Or I think that they have a bye in there, so 6 games missed. And a guy I really respect, Pro Football Doc on Twitter, covered this injury, and he said that he'd be surprised if Michael Thomas is immediately back at full capacity after he's done on IR. So by week 8, he thinks that Michael Thomas will be sidelined for the first half of the season, get eased in, and by then, we're talking about a guy that's only going to be useful at a full capacity the back half of the season, the back third of the season. And I can't get there. I'm not holding a guy on my bench for 9 to 10 weeks. I want to churn my roster. I want to grab next year's James Robinson, Mike Davis, and I don't want to have to pass on them because I'm storing Michael Thomas when we know there's no guarantee that Michael Thomas comes back and is some god. Last year he was injured and then he came back. He averaged only 12 points per game. We also saw a guy like Kenny Golladay was hurt. He came back. He wasn't super useful in fantasy football. And even if I have an IR spot, so that kind of negates the whole I don't want to burn a roster spot. I'm still not interested in the 8th round. And he's going to go a lot earlier in your home leagues. There might be some guy in your league that doesn't know he's hurt, takes him like in the 5th round. There might be some guy in your league that's just confident, oh, I'll take Michael Thomas in the 6th round. So he's a strong fade for me, and people aren't really taking this into account. This is a bad Saints team. Jameis Winston at quarterback, not a great offense around him. This could just be like kind of how the Patriots were last year, where they didn't make the playoffs. And what if by week 10, when Michael Thomas comes back, like let's say Michael Thomas comes back after 9 weeks, because that's what Pro Football Doc said. What happens if they're 3-6? Why would they send Michael Thomas out there if they're 3-6? They would probably have him just rehab the rest of the season and kind of get better for 2022. So I have him personally as a 12th rounder. I'm not trying to spend a top 10 round pick on Michael Thomas, so I can't get there at that price. And this one I've been dying to talk about all offseason. I don't understand the obsession with Mecole Hardman. And I get he's fast. I get he ran a 4.33, and that's dope, man. There's a lot of receivers out there that can run a 4.3 that aren't useful in fantasy football. I think that he's kind of more useful in real life. And you're grabbing him in the 8th round. That's steep. Wide receiver 41. In wide receivers, I've talked about this in the past. The most useful stat for a wide receiver that I like to look at is target share. I want players that command volume, because with volume comes fantasy points. That is the whole idea. And the guy had a 10.2% target share last year, was 97th among wide receivers. And if you want to point at he had 48% snap share because he was kind of buried behind Sammy Watkins, he only commanded a target on 18.2% of his routes in his 2nd year, where he's supposed to ascend and get better as a fantasy football player. He was in the same range in terms of target per route run as guys like N'Keal Harry and James Washington. And he finished with 8 points per game. In a year, his 2nd year, we know these year 2 breakouts, they go crazy. In his 2nd year, he had 8 points per game and finished as the wide receiver 71 after finishing as the wide receiver 74 as a rookie. Someone explain what we're doing with Mecole Hardman in the 8th round. And I understand. This is the problem. People want to chase situation. I don't chase situation. I chase talent first. Mecole Hardman has shown us nothing yet that he is talented, and everyone wants to chase after the Chiefs wide receiver 2. Here's the problem. He's not really the Chiefs wide receiver 2. He was outsnapped in the 3rd preseason game by DeMarcus Robinson. It seems like they're splitting reps in 2 wide receiver sets, and he's barely the Chiefs wide receiver 2. Pretty much him and DeMarcus Robinson are splitting that role, and the problem is that the Chiefs wide receiver 2 hasn't even been valuable for fantasy with Patrick Mahomes. While Patrick Mahomes was there, Sammy Watkins has been the wide receiver 2 all 3 years. He has finished as the wide receiver 62, the wide receiver 49, and the wide receiver 33 in that role the last 3 years. So out of those 3 years, wide receiver 33 would pay off because Mecole Hardman's going out to wide receiver 44, but I doubt he gets there. We've already seen Mecole Hardman in this role. We saw it last year. In the games without Sammy Watkins, there was no difference. I'm going to put it on the screen. These are the splits where Sammy Watkins was out because Sammy Watkins got hurt a bunch of times last year. He averaged 7 to 8 points per game. he averaged 7 to 8 points per game with Sammy Watkins and 7 to 8 points per game without him. I mean, I get that Mecole Hardman is fast, but I think that his ADP and like the hype around him just being on the Chiefs and being really fast is a trap, especially when you can get like a similar profile, but a guy who is actually good at football. Will Fuller. He is fast and he's actually good at football. I would just get Will Fuller in that same exact range. I don't know why Mecole Hardman has a higher ADP on Underdog. It's crazy to me. For this last one, we're going to cover Michael Pittman and Bryan Edwards. Michael Pittman's going at the 810 as the wide receiver 48. Bryan Edwards is going as the 1106 as the wide receiver 61. And both of these guys are super easy fades for me. Michael Pittman was the wide receiver 75 in points per game last year. Edwards was the wide receiver 126. And the reason I'm covering these guys both together is because they both face planted as rookies. And rookie year production is the biggest indicator for future success we have in fantasy football. Now, what is a face planter? Like, what is the definition of a face planter? The guy who put me onto this idea in the offseason was DF Beancounter at DF Beancounter on Twitter. And he uses the term face planter as a guy that has lost 12 picks or more of startup dynasty ADP in fantasy football. Now, a lot of you guys out there are only redraft fantasy football guys, so what I'm saying is kind of foreign, but dynasty ADP is pretty much fantasy football where you keep your guys for life, and it's much more die-hard and rigid fantasy football where you play like year-round and you draft the rookies. But if a player loses dynasty ADP from year 1 to year 2, that means they disappointed in year 1. It's kind of the wisdom of the crowd, because everyone has a lot of optimism for year 2 guys. Oh, okay, he's just a rookie, give him a pass. But the guys who don't get a pass by the market, by ADP, that's a really poor indicator of what those guys will be in the future. And I have a huge database of 302 rookie wide receivers dating back to 2007. 125 of those 302 have face planted. Of that 125, only 13 of those wide receivers have ever hit a top 24 season. It's a really bad sign to face plant in year 1. And I get both of these guys are in empty wide receiver rooms, but these stats don't care. These stats that I'm pulling up, they don't care about situation. They don't care if you had an injury in year 1. They don't care. These are the hardcore facts. And I'm a firm believer in talent over projected opportunity. That's why I'm lower on Mecole Hardman. I get that he's on the Chiefs and it's going to be a high-scoring offense, but I want to draft good players. And it's the same logic here for Pittman and Edwards. I get that, Nelson Aguilar is gone. I get that Michael Pittman's in an empty wide receiver room. And you might say, hey, we're drafting these guys outside of the top 40 wide receivers. We don't need a top 24 season, so what you're presenting here is irrelevant. Here's what I'll say. First of all, when we're drafting in this range, 8th round, 11th round, at wide receiver, we're swinging for max upside. We need someone to be a home run. And second, I did this research in a couple videos ago. I'll link it somewhere. But when we compare rookies going in the same range of ADP as these face planters, rookie wide receivers return a win rate of 10% or better 27% of the time. So if you draft, like, let's say T. Higgins last year and he had a 10% win rate, 1 out of every 10 teams that drafted T. Higgins won their fantasy football leagues. That's the kind of win rates we're looking for when 8.3% is the average. So 1 out of 12. The wide receivers that have produced a 10% or better win rate outside of the first 100 picks, when we compare rookies versus face planters, rookies have a 27% chance of that 10% or better win rate, whereas face planters only have an 18%. So we know at cost, we need to be prioritizing rookies over sophomores. So at their price, when you go to draft Michael Pittman, just draft Rondale Moore or Elijah Moore instead. And at the price of Bryan Edwards, just go draft Terrace Marshall instead. I'm telling you guys, just go grab the rookies in their range. Don't fall for these face planters. Not all year 2 breakouts are built the same. And that's going to do it for today. Let me know down below if you disagree with any of the guys on this list. I know that these negative type videos, they get a reaction on people. You guys, I know there's going to be some Michael Pittman stands out there, some Mecole Hardman guys out there. Now, let me know down below. Don't just come at my fit. Don't come at the basement. Come at, give me some logic behind why you like your guy in your range. And I'm also going to say all of these guys are in my rankings lower than consensus, so you don't end up with them on your team. I have my draft guide and my rankings all set up, so I have these guys in scenarios where you won't be picking them at ADP, so you kind of get the guys I would prefer in their range. And on top of that, in the draft guide, you get a top 250 of 1 quarterback and Superflex rankings. You get all my tiers. You get an exclusive spot in the Discord where you can get a one-on-one channel to me for fantasy advice, trade advice, waiver wire, start sit, all of that good stuff. So make sure you go check out patreon.com/Ron Stewart. It's in the description. It'll be in the comments. And that's going to do it for us for today. I should probably start saying this more in these videos, but I'm going to be live streaming every single night. I will be live streaming every single night until September 9th when it's kickoff. So tonight, tomorrow night, all the way through Wednesday night, we will be live streaming some kind of draft, some kind of mock draft. I want to do some high stakes drafts where we do like $350 drafts, some underdog drafts. So we're going to have some good times on the live stream. So make sure you go check that out. as always, I will see you guys in the next one.
Thirsty, thirsty, trying to choose. I mean, I know I'm critical. My nitty bag, my kitty boots. I got the juice, I got the juice. 10-0, Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on.